go. We're here. Foxtoberfest.
It's crazy, the cars that are here.
With two of the Saleen R cars, I thought it would be a good time to get us to try to do a video if we can get over the noise and stuff. But I think having these two together, we had to take this opportunity.
Oh, definitely.
In talking with the owner of this car, Mike Charles, this one was Steve's first manufacturer win.
Yes.
There's a few unique things about the car. Mike was just telling me. The indentions on the hood.
Oh,
roof,
yeah.
It's when Steve jumped.
Well, there's a picture of him jumping on the roof.
Yeah, and he destroyed the little cow cover. And so his first manufacturer win with him driving was in this car.
Was that car, correct.
But 86, 19, 88.
20.
20. And this one is this is yours.
This one's one of my cars, yes.
But the transition, I guess I want to talk about the differences between the cars, because this was kind of the study for what this became. Right?
Everything that went wrong with this car, they improved with this car.
Right.
And one of the biggest things were the 4-bolt wheels.
And
this was one of the and the rear drum brakes. One of the things that Steve realized is these cars don't stop.
Yeah.
These cars really don't stop. These cars don't stop either, but they stop better.
Yeah, they stop better than this one, right?
And they broke lugs off at the different races. So what they ended up doing was, it was the final push to convert the cars to 5 lug, because in the production of the cars, it's a lot more work to switch all the suspension and the brakes around.
Yeah.
But they had to for the endurance racing.
Yeah, and that's a proof of concept of racing, of taking that and putting it into the street cars.
Exactly.
And it's what everybody gets when they buy a Fox Saleen, is the upgrades that from racing.
And what else about the brakes? Remember, the 85, 86 had 10-inch brakes.
Yep.
And luckily these had, 10.5s. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it makes a big difference in how long they last.
Absolutely.
But they did rotor changes, brake changes. That was part of the endurance racing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that they did improvement-wise. The wheels on both these cars are kind of a trick offset. If you notice how much offsets in the front of these wheels, we talked about it in one of the other videos.
Yep.
But it made a big difference, because when you put the disc brake in the rear, unlike this car, is even around.
Yeah, well,
when you widen the rear and the front's narrower, it makes the car push.
Yep.
So by putting the wider wheels in the front, it didn't push as badly.
Yep.
But there's lots of changes. This car, they put the roll cage in front of the dash, and they had the bar in the middle of the windshield also, which SCCA required them to do. And then they changed the rules later, and they were able to put stuff behind the dash. Now, this bar that went across, SCCA said you can't do that anymore. So what did Saleen do? They hid it behind the dash.
Oh.
So there's a bar behind the vents in there.
I remember you saying that in one of the previous videos. It's the they call them bumblebee cars. People call those bumblebee cars. But these cars it's behind the dash.
Correct. Mike, does the speedometer work in this car? It does. Okay. In this car, it doesn't work because the bar runs right behind the head of the speedometer.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So something interesting that Mike was talking about is this little piece right here.
Yep.
He mentioned that when they got up to 80 or 90 miles an hour,
the wiper would lift.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Steve was driving a Mercury, and there was a foil on the windshield wiper. Well, they took it off the rental car, cut it in half, and put a piece on this one and a piece on the 29.
You mean they took stuff off a rental car for a race car? That's never happened.
But a lot of tricks, they lowered the motor in this. Kenny Brown was heavily involved in taking this car and making it raceable.
Oh, yeah.
That's such a term. And then and he helped design a lot of what was in this.
And the motors moved back in the car. There's lots of cool stuff.
Well, they cut like an inch off of the blades of the fan, because the motors sit so low they hit the fan shroud.
Exactly. There's lots of trick stuff that he did with these cars to make them competitive. And what he learned in this car, he moved to the 87 cars. When they won with the 87 cars, SCCA said, don't bring that stuff back. So they had to start over again. But obviously, Kenny wasn't involved with the 88 and 89 cars.
No, but in my conversations that I had with Kenny, and those that don't know, I've got a podcast I'm editing, and I sat down for about 2.5 hours with Kenny to talk about where he came through in his career and starting into the Mustangs. And this was his first dealings with a Mustang. Prior to it, it was European cars and other stuff. But he really, like he said, I went to the Ford parts bin and said, what will fit?
Right.
And so I wanted a 5-lug rear end. I wanted 5-lug front brakes. I wanted this. He goes, I checked. He goes, so the 87 Up cars are really because we as a team needed it better for racing.
Well, and they were so successful with these cars that the guys at Ford actually listened.
Yeah.
And said, okay, we'll do this with you. And they had a great, companionship with Ford, if that's the right word, to merge parts and have the ability to dig into the parts bins.
A partnership, is
yes.
going to say that. But this, it's just very unique. If you step back and you look at it, there's not a whole lot of difference in the air dams on the side, but the front
right.
is very different. And then, of course, I think with this car, who built the motors? Did Dave Dixon?
Dave Dixon did the motors in these cars, and that car still got the original motor in it.
Because a lot of the cars they pulled the motor out.
Well, that's got an 89 numbered motor because they kept the car from the next season as a backup car, so it's got an 89 Dave Dixon motor in it.
Okay.
But the transmission's out of something else. The serial number doesn't match up with the car, and neither does the block.
Well, it's probably, when you're
it's
racing,
probably for one of the other. They swapped all that stuff around.
Yeah, you break it and then put it back in, right?
Oh yeah. The other thing that you notice too, that the sponsorship would change from car to car, but they had the General Tire stayed, throughout all the seasons. So the General Tire stuff changed a little bit, but Road and Track was a sponsor back in '86, and then in '87. Remember, the '87 car has Road and Track back here.
Yes.
But a lot of the stuff was a lot the same, but it was the way that they implemented things and the things they changed were all based on failures, which is racing.
The shortcomings. So it's like,
Yep.
anything that causes a problem, you want to make sure it doesn't cause a problem the next time.
Exactly.
It's racing, right? Overcome it.
Don't get me wrong, these cars are super fast. I chased Steve in this car, in the other sister car to this, around mid-Ohio, and he was a lot more, what's the right word, ballsy with the brakes than I was, and I could catch him in the straights because this car made more power.
Right.
But when it got to the braking zones, he just sort of hung it out. I guess probably because it wasn't his car, and
or his experience. He's like
maybe a little bit more experience on the track, and I could catch up to him, and then he left me. It was a lot of fun to duel it out with Steve on the track.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's way cool. I'm trying to think of any other differences. I mean, it's 4-lug to 5-lug. The wheels. I mean, these are Renault wheels.
They're Renault wheels. These are specially made wheels for these cars.
And then these are too, in a sense.
Those are
right?
too. The rears are standard Saleen Mustang, but the front has, like I said earlier, has all the offset.
8-inch wide.
Yeah, they're 8-inch wide.
Yeah. Motor mods. I remember talking with Kenny, is that when they went through to build these motors, they would take a micrometer and measure every stamped rocker arm to get the longest ones out of 200 or 300 of them in a box. Same with push rods, and same with to get all the perfect parts to make the motors fast.
Well, and also if you notice, the computer in this car is in the kick panel, and the computer in this one's under the glove box. Because
Rick Titus was driving, and it hit, and they didn't know it, and the car was laying down. I remember because I chatted briefly with Rick, and I chatted with Mike at length about it.
Right. So then they moved the computers there. It's something they learned from racing.
Right. Because it's of an accident. It's like, okay, we need to move that so it doesn't have an impact, take an impact.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that failed computer, they finished third according to Mike.
Yeah. Which
is a big deal. It's a good team, good drivers. At that time, when you getting into where you had like Parnelli Jones. And, some really
These
big
cars
team
aren't
names.
easy to drive. You got to pitch them around. You got to get into a turn, and if you use the brakes to slow down, the brakes will wear out. So you got to slide the car around in order to be able to slow it down.
Drift, as they say.
Yeah, it's a little intimidating.
I don't want to say drifting because that's definitely a type of racing, but drift is what you're doing through the corners.
Exactly. Well, they ran 24-hour races with this car, and if you notice the two holes in the front, there was a bracket they put on the front, and they ran like off-road driving lights in the car so they could see. That's what the switch is in there. I tell everybody it's for the ejection seat if they don't like the way I'm driving. And then Mike says that the headlights in those are a brighter European headlight that they put in
with an extra relay.
With an extra relay to keep it from burning it up.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
With 24-hour races with Motorsport and any other, and a 12-hour too. Sometimes you can get into the evening depending on when the start time is.
Oh yeah, they drove through the night.
You gotta have night.
Yeah.
Vision, so they say. But Mark, I just thought it was great to be able to take this opportunity.
Oh, definitely.
Both of them are in the same place. You all live in different states. And to have them together, we had to do a video.
And with all this Mustang noise, hopefully everybody can hear everything.
But it's great.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do this and put these together like this. We had to get Mike to move around, but yeah,
Definitely. Well, it's been fun.
It's been very fun. Thanks for bringing the cars out,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you.